Hi gardening friends, and welcome back to our channel. Here at Hen's Honey and Horticulture, I'm going to teach you how to seed start today. Right now it's February 16th here in Virginia, so we are about 9 weeks out from our last frost date, and I'm going to start sowing seeds indoors in my basement. As you can see, we're not in any fancy grow house or anywhere like bright and airy to be starting seeds, so that means you can do this too. So long as your space that you're going to be starting your seeds in isn't too cool, I think you're going to be fine. You want the space to be about 65 degrees to 75 degrees. I know that's a big difference, but these seedlings, they're pretty tolerant. You don't want to be starting it in your garage where it's going to get really cold and maybe even experience some freezing temperatures. All right, so to go over some supplies, today I'm going to show you how to seed start in seed cells. This is a 72 flat, meaning there are 72 cells. You can get these all over. You can get them at your local hardware store, you can get them on Amazon, you can get them at specialty gardening stores. They come in all different sizes. My favorite one is 72. I feel like it's the most versatile for most of the things that I grow. I know some people even start in smaller ones, and then they'll bump them up, but I don't like that step of having to bump things up, so I just go ahead and I start them in a 72. In an upcoming video, I'm going to teach you how to do soil blocking, which doesn't require this at all. It just requires a special tool and a tray, but I wanted to show both methods because you may have one or the other and they both work great. I have both supplies on hand, so I'm going to do a little bit of both this year. I have a big tub of wet seed starting mix. This one is Natural and Organic Jiffy Seed Starting Mix. I don't choose anything fancy, whatever's on sale at the hardware store. And I generally have several different types of brands just lying around, so that's the one I'm using today. I have this big tub, it's filled with the seed starting mix, and I also pre-filled it with water too. I have burlap. Some people like clear domes, so after we sow all of our seeds, you're gonna wanna cover it with something to help retain moisture. I like using the burlap because it's a natural fiber material. It can be reused, and I just don't have the best luck with the clear domes. I feel like I start to get like algae or mold or something that grows on the top of my seedlings. So I just keep it nice and airy and use a thin layer of burlap. It's a very open weave, and I just fold it in half once. You have your seeds, and then I have stickers and a little Sharpie because it's what I have on hand. I've used painter's tape before. I've used little plant labels before. Whatever you have, that's gonna be what you write that you sowed and when you sowed it. So today we're gonna sow eucalyptus, and today is February the 16th, so I'm gonna write 216 eucalyptus on it and stick it right next to it where I sowed it in the tray. When you have things that are really small, well, really any type of seed, I always love to have a little something. You can use a cap or a little dish. I like this plastic ramekin to put my seeds in, and then if the seed is really small, I use a toothpick to help me place the seed. As well as seed starting today, I'm also going to show you the rig I have set up for growing. So I'm going to show you all the grow lights, the shelving, and the heat mats I use. So I've pre-wetted my soil. And the benefit to doing this is I can fill my seed tray with it, I can sow my seed, and I can move it to the heat mat. I don't have to go ahead and water them because the soil already has plenty of moisture in them. Now in a couple days I will have to go back and give them their first true water, but it just simplifies the seed starting process so much if you go ahead and pre-wet your soil. So this soil is all the same consistency now, and it's really sticky, and honestly it could even use a little bit more water. When I go to squeeze it, you can see water dripping out of it. You don't want it to be soupy. You want it to be like kind of a really thick brownie batter consistency. And the way I quickly do this is I'm going to take my 72 cell tray, and we're going to get messy today. I just go ahead and I start globbing it on. can do this any way you want. I find this is what works best for me. I usually do this outside, but since I'm on camera, we're doing it right here on the table today. When I'm outside, I go ahead and I just dump a big old glob in the middle and I start spreading it around. But we're gonna try not to be too wasteful and too messy indoors today. Some mess is always inevitable when I'm working with dirt. All right, so this looks pretty good to me. Get that out of the way. And I'm just gonna give this a firm tap. Smooth it over, fill out any holes. We're tapping the air out so the soil can fall to the bottom. All right, I absolutely love this step of gardening. It makes me feel like I'm gardening already, even though there is snow on the ground outside. Satisfies that exciting itch for spring. All right, so I'm going to start with the lemon bush eucalyptus packet. And now this says sow seeds into cell trays or open flats 10 to 12 weeks before last frost. We're 9 weeks out, so it'll be okay. Cover seed lightly with fine vermiculite. Okay, so you will see that a lot on the back of seed packets. So when it says cover lightly, we're not gonna push these seeds into the soil at all. We're just gonna sow them right on top. And then we're gonna go ahead and cover them in vermiculite, and I'll show you what that looks like too. Some seeds that are bigger, they'll say plant 1/4 inch deep. In that case, I don't think I have any of those that we're gonna start today, but I'm going to show you what I would do. Like if I was planting zinnias or cosmos, those are my favorite examples because I plant so many of them. I would just take my fingers and I would poke holes, not very deep, just a nice firm press. I'd go ahead and I'd put my seed right in there. But today, we're not doing that. We're sewing things right on top. But that's just a quick and easy trick. It's actually kind of fun. And my son loves helping me with that too because he can get his fingers really dirty and he's doing something helpful. All right, so I have my seeds. These are my eucalyptus seeds. And I have my toothpick. And since we're sewing these right on top, you can either pick them up with your fingers and place them down, but these are actually not as small as I was anticipating, so I'm just gonna lick the tip of my Q-tip, or of my toothpick, stick one seed, and then wipe it on my dirt. And you really wanna pay attention and make sure that you're just getting one seed per cell because you don't want to waste these seeds. It adds up and you don't get that many per packet, so you want to make sure that each one of them has a viable chance of becoming a plant. If you just sprinkle them across the top, you're going to have to thin them, meaning you're going to have to leave one standing and pull out the rest. We just don't want to trump, and you would either toss the ones that you're thinning, that you're pulling out, to give one good one space to grow, or you're going to try to transplant it, and that's just a lot of trauma for a little baby seedling. I don't want to mess with their roots. So I'm just going to take my time putting these in, and it's going to be totally worth it. I just sowed my first variety of eucalyptus and now I'm moving on to my second. My second variety I've grown before, so this packet was already open. I don't have the same amount as I did with the other, but because they're both eucalyptus, I am going to seed them in the same tray. If you're growing on a bigger scale, you're going to want to make sure that you have one variety in each tray so they're not easily mixed up. I can quickly identify the difference between the eucalyptus silver drop and the lemon bush, so I'm not too concerned about it. But the reason you don't want to mix a ton of different varieties in one tray is that sometimes different varieties germinate at different times, and that changes when you move them from a heat mat to the light source, which we'll go over in a little bit. So now I'm going to go ahead and sow my silver dollar eucalyptus, and these seeds are even smaller. I don't know if you can get a good view, especially with the dirt in there, but they're very small, so the toothpick is definitely going to be my friend here. All right, so once you've sown your entire tray, we're going to cover it with a very fine layer of fine vermiculite. The fine vermiculite looks like this. I'm being pretty generous with it. Vermiculite is great because it prevents the top of your soil from getting that hard crust. And sometimes when it gets that hard crust, it's hard to tell if your seeds are getting adequate water when watering them. So the vermiculite tends to keep everything really light and crumbly on the top, which I like. Okay, so once you've reached this step, you want to go ahead and label what you sowed. So I just wrote eucalyptus 216, the date I sowed it. I'm just going to clear off a section, stick it right here. And right here. Okay, after you've done this step, you're going to want to cover it. I use a really open weave burlap, and I just fold it in half once. And I call this step tucking in my little seedlings. Just lay it over top, nothing fancy like that. If you don't have I choose to use burlap because it's a natural fiber and I can reuse it year to year. Some people prefer to use the clear domes that you see. You want to keep those clear domes or the burlap on top of your seedlings until you see germination. Once you see germination, we're going to take them off the heat mat and take this top layer off. That's when you go ahead and put them under light. I like to use burlap because if I have a clear dome and it cracks, then I have to go out and replace it. And sometimes they can be hard to find the exact ones that line up with your seed trays. Where burlap is so cheap, you can just go ahead and cut a new piece, lie it right over the top, and it stores really nicely because you can roll it up tightly and it doesn't take up a lot of room. So as I mentioned earlier, I don't have a greenhouse for starting my seeds, but that's okay. Right now we're just in my unfinished basement. It stays plenty warm throughout the year. I got these big shelves from Lowe's or Home Depot. I think I was able to pay $10 or $15 for them. They're just made out of pallet wood, and they get rid of them after the season where they're selling all their flats of flowers. Sometimes you need a hookup to see if you can get a hold of them because I've run into times when I go and ask if I can purchase them and they're like, no way, we don't sell them. But if you talk to the right person, they'll generally put a price on it and sell it to you. So I have about 3 of these, although I don't think I've ever needed more than 2 of them. So on the top, I have my heat mats. Yep, they're nice and warm right now. Got these off of Amazon. They say the dimensions on them. Heat mat, 10 inches by 20.75. These fit my cell trays perfectly, and I want to say they were like 10 or 12 bucks a piece. They were not very expensive. What's great about growing with a heat mat is you actually don't need one heat mat for everything you sow. During the spring, you're sowing things every week. You're not sowing things all at once based on the back of the seed packet. Some things will say sow 10 weeks before your last frost. Others will say sow 6, 4 weeks. So as things are being sown, you're putting them on here. Once they germinate, you take them off and put them under your lights. So then your heat mats become available again for the next thing you want to sow. It's really, really nice. So I try to keep all of my heat mats on top. I just have 2 out for this video. Then I have these LED lights, and they're hung by chains. I think I have an extra box here. I bought them off of Amazon, but you can get them at any local hardware store, like Ace, Home Depot, and they just say LED shop light on them, and they come with a couple chains and hooks. So I went ahead and screwed the little eye hooks that came with the lights on the underside of my shelving. I'm just gonna take this off. So I went ahead and screwed in the hooks that came with these on the underside of my shelving, and then they just come with a little chain, so you can continue to adjust the height. They plug in and they just have a little toggle on-off switch. You don't need special growing lights to start seeds. Like I said, mine are just standard LED lights, and what I like about the LED lights is that they give off a lot of light but not a lot of heat. The trick to starting seedlings when they do move to light is that you want to just keep them hovering right above the top of the soil where your seeds were sown. You don't want them 6-8 inches above, because then those seeds, when they sprout, they're going to reach for your light, and it's called getting leggy. Then your flowers, they just don't end up being as healthy and strong. They're going to start to flop over, and likely they're not going to make it at all. So just keep your light right above the height of your germinated sprout, right above the soil. And as they start to grow, you're going to be checking on them every day and watering them every day. But then you can just move your chain up little by little and keep the light right above the height of the plant. All right, so I just grabbed my seed tray of eucalyptus that we sowed, and we have the burlap on top, and it is sitting directly on top of this heat mat. I'm gonna check on these every day, and when I start to see them germinate about, I don't know, maybe 75% of the tray, I'm gonna go ahead and take the burlap off and move them right under here and kick these lights on. My seed tray will probably hold moisture for another day or two, and then I'm gonna go ahead and water them. I'm gonna take you back over to my seed starting table and show you how I will water them. Okay, so pretend this is the seed tray that we just filled with eucalyptus. It's nice and full. We're about 3 days in. I start to see that my soil is drying out and it's time to water. You don't want to wait for these seedlings to get too dry and crumbly. They're not going to make it. You want to stay on top of watering. I think once I get going, it's about every second to third day that I'm watering things in a seed tray. Soil blocking is different, but we will talk about that in a different video. I like to keep several of these trays on hand. They are deep and they are the same size. They have no drainage holes in them, so the water is gonna stay. I fill the water about halfway in here, and then I take my tray of eucalyptus seeds, any seeds that you have sown, and I'm just gonna sit it in here. It's gonna wick water up from the bottom and keep my soil nice and moist. You don't want to water things overhead, because likely the water you pour on top isn't going to be gentle enough, and you're gonna end up washing your seeds away. These guys are really fragile in the beginning, so you wanna make sure they stay nice and wet. When I'm done, I pull this out, I let it sit and drain for just a minute until it stops becoming really, really drippy, and then I go ahead and I put it right back on my heat mat. I've never had an issue with a little bit of water getting on my heat mat. Obviously, you don't want to drench them, but a little bit of dribble coming out the bottom is not going to be the end of the world. As far as troubleshooting goes, let's say you missed a day of watering and they dried out way quicker than you thought. I'm not talking you forgot about them for a week, but if you're a day or two late, there is still some hope in salvaging these little fragile seedlings. So you're gonna go ahead and bottom water, then you're gonna remove your burlap, and you might notice that some of your cells pop up when they hit the water. The water pushes them up. That means your cell got way too dry. It's not soaking up the water like you want. Instead, it's kind of repelling and floating on top. If you see this happen, I want you to take a really, really soft water spout, maybe even a spray bottle, and start misting from the top. You're gonna start wetting them on both sides, and you're gonna hope to see them sink back down and start to absorb water. You can get away with this a couple times, but you definitely don't wanna make a habit of it. Seed starting is like taking care of a new puppy. You have got to check on these, and it is a chore. It is a lot of work, but it is totally, totally worth it. You get a head start on your growing season, and you're able to plant out healthy, viable plants into your garden. You don't have to worry about being out there watering every day, looking at things to see if they've germinated, worry about if birds came and ate your seeds, and if you're just watering the dirt. You can actually see your plant grow and take off and know exactly what you're watering when it comes out into the garden. So that is all you need to know to get started with sowing seeds indoors in seed trays. Come back soon for part 2, where I'm going to teach you everything about soil blocking. Please subscribe to our channel if you want to follow along for more seed growing tips and see how we get these out in our new cut flower garden. Until next time, bye friends.